Good morning, garden friends. Thanks for tuning in to Canadian Victory Garden. I'm Sarah, and I'm super excited to talk about tomatoes today. So it's a beautiful morning. It's going to be another hot day, so let's get some stuff done first thing this morning before we are melting and have to go inside. Behind me is our tomato bed where we planted all of our tomatoes. Last year we planted about 60 tomato plants, a couple of different indeterminate varieties, and things got out of control. They were stagger planted within these same beds, not this same bed, they were stagger planted within a different bed. And we ended up just having a huge mass of foliage. It was hard to get in and find the tomatoes, and we had a huge tomato hornworm problem. We couldn't pick through the leaves enough to get all the caterpillars off, so we had a lot of pest pressure and damage to our crop. So this year we really scaled it back. We have 15 tomato plants just in this bed behind me, just planted down the center, and we're going to do a different trellising this year because last year we tried just staking everything and the tomato plants just got so big and heavy, and the tomato varieties that we planted were very, very large. And a lot of the stakes got broken, a lot of them got bent, and then because we live in Canada, we left the stakes in the ground through the winter, and a lot of them got damaged just from the frost upheaval or trying to get them out and move them in the summer. So stakes were not for us this year. Last year. So this year we're trying something new. We actually have pea trellises in this bed right now for the peas to continue growing up. And on top of that, we've just put in like a 2x4 to add like a upper support for the tomatoes. And then we decided to try string trellising. So I set all this up a few weeks ago, and then I was looking at it thinking, either I've misunderstood how you do string trellising or this isn't going to work either, because as you can see, I've tied string to the top, the upright top part, the horizontal, and I've tied it to the tomato plant in the bottom. So here's one of our beautiful tomato plants that we had to purchase because we got a really late frost this year, and all of the tomatoes that I grew from seed unfortunately died despite my best efforts. So this is a Roma variety. I think it's a San Marzano, but we'll find out eventually because I am terrible for just planting things and not labeling them and then never remembering what's what. As I was saying, we are trying the string trellis method. So we've tried the tomato cages, which are terrible. Please, nobody buy tomato cages anymore. They are not for tomatoes, and especially not for indeterminate varieties of tomatoes like your Romas and your beefsteaks, because Romas, beefsteaks, indeterminate basically means that they're a vine that will continue growing until the frost kills it. So they will get tall and leggy and crazy. And as we all know, those tomato cages are only like, what, 3 feet tall? So they're entirely inappropriate for holding up a big, heavy tomato plant like that, like we have in front of us. Last year, we tried staking with hardwood stakes that were 1 inch by 1 inch, pounded into the ground. And we had a lot of trouble with that too. We had tomato plants breaking the stakes because they got so heavy. We had the stakes we left in the ground because they were so far in we couldn't get them out without breaking them, and then with the freeze-thaw cycle of Canada, they got broken on their own. So we're going to try something new this year with tomato string trellising, and I set all of this up, and then I started thinking about how it still didn't seem like the best solution. So as you can see, the wind's blown around a little bit, and the string has now become wrapped around this tomato plant, and it's not really providing any support at all to the tomato. I have it actually tied just underneath of the first set of, actually it's not the first set, there's another one, just underneath some of the flowers that are eventually going to make fruit to provide support for that weight. But I was thinking about how the knot that I've made, the loop of the string around the tomato, is really going to end up suffocating that tomato. The stem will get thicker and thicker. The string is obviously not going to get thicker and thicker, and it's really going to strangle and impede. And because we've only got about 15 tomato plants this year, but we want to have a huge production, we really need to encourage the tomato plants to grow as much as possible. So now we're going to set up a new solution, take that string off of that tomato, use some different equipment, and try to really encourage these tomatoes to produce as much as possible. So let's get going with that. To solve problem number 1 of tying the tomatoes up, tying directly to the tomatoes, the first solution is to actually stake your line all the way to the ground. So I have corners of hangers that we've cut off that we actually used for another, we're repurposing these. We originally had them cut for the cloche use in the spring. And I've made a loop for my line. And I'm just going to get this as close to the base of the tomato as I can. So now I will have a nice taunt line all the way up to the upper horizontal crosspiece. The second part of the solution of not tying to the tomatoes are these tomato clips that I ordered on Amazon. Basically the line goes in here and you clip around the line and then the clip won't move, and this offers support to the tomato without actually attaching to the tomato, and it's easy to clip and unclip. So I'm going to install these now just underneath of where the fruits are forming, or just underneath where the leaves are. So once the tomato clip is installed on the line, it can't slide up or down, it stays stationary in that spot, but it's not strangling the tomato stem like tying directly to the tomato would. I do have some more fruit forming right on the top there, so I'm going to get a third one ready. Okay, perfect. So we've got like gentle support for these tomatoes as they continue to grow. The other problem I mentioned is the foliage, the density of the foliage that we had last year when they were sort of really closely packed together. So I'm actually going to go along with a clean pair of clippers and clip off every single leaf that's below the first set of fruit. Any leaves that are forming below your tomato fruits are actually drawing energy away from the fruit formation. And this will also allow a lot of airflow between the tomato plants, which will hopefully prevent any diseases like rust or blight that we might encounter later in the season. In order to prevent any transfer of potential funguses between tomato plants, you should clean your tools with rubbing alcohol after you've used them. So one other thing we're going to try this year is to leave the suckers on rather than pruning them off, or at least leave some of the suckers on. I already have a couple of suckers growing at the bottom. We'll see what those turn into. And then I have one here. So the intention is that we're going to allow the suckers to form fruits as well to get a higher yield out of each tomato plant. And we've applied cross braces to the top to do basically the same thing that we've done to the main stem with string support and the tomato clips for the suckers. But at this point, the suckers are pretty tiny, so I'm not going to set that up today. All right, now we've set all the clips and the reels and the strings and the staking up. We've got the tomatoes all pointing upright and well supported, and I just need to go through and prune off the bottom leaves like I mentioned earlier. And we're all set, and it is getting hot, so I'm glad this job is pretty much done. We're going to check in about a month and show you what it looks like after the tomatoes have had a chance to grow, so stay tuned. Thanks everyone.